Chosen one, this news about you is hitting them like a bag of hot mess because they lied and now everyone knows. Witnesses are comparing notes. What was whispered is now confirmed. There is no pivot left, no spin that saves face. Exposure brings consequence, and consequence brings correction. You are not late. You are on time, clean. You've been healing. You've been growing. You've been doing the internal work that transforms people from the inside out. And that transformation is about to become visible in ways that can't be denied. You're about to be recognized for something big, something that puts you in front of people who matter, people with power, people with platforms, people who can open doors you didn't even know existed. There's something about you that can't be copied. This saboteur has tried. They've watched you, studied you, copied your mannerisms, your language, your spiritual practices. They've seen what makes you magnetic and attempted to replicate it, but it never quite lands the same way, because what you have isn't a technique, it's not a style, it's not something you learned from a book or a course. It's a frequency, a vibration that comes from walking through fire and choosing to let it refine you instead of define you. It's the gold that only gets revealed when everything else burns away. You carry something rare, something precious, and people feel it even when they can't name it. That's why strangers open up to you. That's why people tell you things they've never told anyone else. That's why opportunities find you in the strangest ways. You're operating on a wavelength that most people can't even perceive, but everyone can feel. And there's someone watching who recognizes exactly what they're seeing. Someone with real power, real influence, real authority in an industry you've only dreamed about. This person has seen 1,000 people try to fake what you carry naturally. They've watched countless performers attempt to manufacture what flows out of you effortlessly, and they know the difference. This person has a foundation so solid, so established, that when they move, entire industries shift. When they make choices, doors don't just open, walls disappear. Pathways that didn't exist suddenly materialize, and you're about to be chosen. You broke something that had been in your bloodline for generations, a pattern, a curse, a cycle of pain that repeated itself so many times people thought it was just the way things were. Your grandmother lived it, your mother lived it, maybe even further back than that. This thing kept showing up, keeping people small, keeping them stuck, keeping them wounded, and you looked at it and said, no, not me, not anymore. This ends with me. Do you understand how rare that is? Most people see the pattern, most people recognize the cycle, but they convince themselves it's too big to break, too old to change, too deeply rooted to dig out, so they accommodate it, they work around it, they pass it down to the next generation with apologies and explanations about how this is just how the family is. But you didn't do that. You stood in front of generations of pain and said healing happens here, not just for me, for everyone who came before me, who didn't know how, for everyone who comes after me, who won't have to carry this weight. That kind of healing doesn't go unnoticed, not by the universe, not by the spiritual realm, not by the people who are watching for individuals who are doing the real work. That kind of healing creates a shift in the atmosphere. It changes things on levels most people can't even perceive, and that shift is what's creating the opportunity. That transformation is what's attracting the recognition. The thing you did in private, the battles you fought when nobody was watching, the healing you chose when it would have been easier to stay broken, that's what's about to be rewarded in public. But your saboteur doesn't want that story told. They don't want anyone to know what you overcame, because if people know what you survived and how you transformed it, their little performance looks even more pathetic in comparison. Let me tell you about this person who's been working against you. The one who seems so harmless, so quirky, so spiritual and enlightened, and on their own journey of healing. People have been convinced that this is just a free spirit. A little scattered maybe, A little unconventional, but ultimately good-hearted and well-meaning. It's all an act, every bit of it. The whimsical personality is calculated. The spiritual talk is strategic. The whole wounded healer persona they've crafted is designed to manipulate people into trusting them while underestimating them. Because if people think you're just a harmless eccentric, they don't see the knife until it's already in their back. They studied you. They watched how people responded to your authenticity. They saw how your vulnerability created connection. They noticed how your spiritual practice grounded you and gave you strength, and they created a counterfeit version of all of it. It worked. For a while, they convinced people they'd found enlightenment. They told family members they'd changed. They made announcements about giving up certain behaviors and devoting themselves to higher purposes. They talked about devotion, about turning away from worldly pursuits to focus on spiritual growth. It was all lies, strategic lies told to the exact people who would be moved by that kind of story because they needed support, they needed money, they needed influence. Your family members were told that this person was the spiritual one now, the healed one, the one doing the work, and you were painted as the problem, the one holding on to bitterness, the one refusing to move on, the one making everything about yourself. And some people believed it. Some people who should have seen through it didn't. Some people who should have questioned it accepted it at face value. If these words stirred your consciousness, hype this video to help more chosen ones awaken to this. This is the part that hurts the most, the family involvement. Because you could handle enemies, you could manage strangers coming after you, but family, people who are supposed to protect you, that's a different kind of betrayal. The funding is real, the legal obstacles, the bureaucratic nightmares, the mysterious delays and complications that keep showing up in your path. Someone is paying for all of that. Family members who have money, who have connections, who have the ability to make your life significantly harder. And they made that choice because the person in the mask is a very good storyteller. They know how to frame things, how to position themselves as the victim, how to make your legitimate grievances sound like attacks, how to weaponize people's desire to be supportive and protective. So they approached these family members with a story, a carefully crafted narrative about how you're trying to destroy them, how you're making false accusations, how you're ruining their reputation out of jealousy or bitterness, and they sold it well enough that checkbooks opened. Now there are lawyers involved, real lawyers working on how to block you from opportunities, how to create legal obstacles that drain your time and energy and resources. The strategy isn't complete destruction. It's just making sure you're so worn down by the time you reach your destiny that you can't actually fulfill it. Every obstacle they create is making you sharper. Every legal game they play is teaching you how the system works. Every delay they manufacture is giving you more time to prepare. They believe they're weakening you. Actually, they're training you. You want to know what's really happening behind closed doors right now. The person who pretended to be spiritual is having panic attacks, real ones, because they can feel the walls closing in. They've started contradicting themselves in conversations, forgetting which version of the story they told to which person, mixing up details that don't align anymore, and people are starting to notice. Someone asked them a simple question the other day, something innocent, something that should have been easy to answer if their story was true, and they froze. You could see it in their eyes, that moment of calculation, that split second where they're trying to remember what they said before, trying to figure out which lie fits this particular audience, and they fumbled it, badly. The person who asked the question didn't say anything in the moment, but you better believe they went home and started thinking, replaying conversations in their mind, seeing patterns they'd missed before, wondering what else doesn't add up. You have to have a perfect memory. You have to remember every single detail you fabricated, and keep it consistent across every conversation with every person. And this person, they've been performing for so long, telling so many different versions to so many different people, that keeping it all straight has become impossible. The family member who wrote the biggest check is starting to ask for documentation, starting to want proof, starting to request meetings with lawyers directly, and that's making the saboteur sweat. Because once people start verifying instead of trusting, once they start demanding evidence instead of accepting stories, the whole operation falls apart. You know what else is happening? The people who were told bad things about you are starting to interact with you directly, maybe through mutual connections, maybe at events, maybe just by chance, and they're discovering that you're nothing like what they were told. You're not bitter, you're not stuck, you're not the problem they were led to believe you were. In fact, you're thriving, you're peaceful, you're clearly doing the actual work this saboteur claimed to be doing, and that creates cognitive dissonance, because now they have to reconcile two completely different versions of reality, the story they were sold versus what they're witnessing with their own eyes. And when people are confronted with that kind of contradiction, they start asking questions, they start digging. People are comparing notes now. That's the beginning of the end. When the people who've been manipulated start talking to each other, start sharing what they were told, start realizing they were all given different versions of the same events, that's when the truth starts emerging from the shadows. One family member says, "Wait, I was told this happened." Another says, "That's strange. I was told something completely different." A third chimes in with yet another version, and suddenly everyone's looking at each other wondering who's telling the truth. Except you're not even in these conversations yet. You're off living your life, building your future, preparing for what's coming. There's a moment coming, a public moment, something that puts you in a spotlight you didn't ask for but absolutely deserve. It might be a legal proceeding, it might be a media appearance, it might be something you never saw coming, but it's going to be public, visible, undeniable, and in that moment, the truth is going to come out. Not just your truth, their truth. Every lie they told, every manipulation they orchestrated, every family member they deceived, all of it exposed under lights so bright, there's no shadow left to hide in. There's something legal happening, something official, something that creates a record, something that can't be taken back or rewritten later, and whatever this is, it's going to vindicate you in ways you didn't even know you needed, because you've been fighting this battle alone for so long. You've been trying to explain what's happening and having people look at you like you're paranoid or dramatic. You've been pointing out the patterns and having people tell you you're reading too much into things. You've been calling out the lies and having people choose to believe the liar. But when this moment comes, you won't have to explain anymore. You won't have to convince anyone. You won't have to defend yourself or prove your case. The truth is going to speak for itself, loudly, clearly, undeniably, and the person who's been working against you is going to be exposed, not because you exposed them, because they exposed themselves, because lies have a shelf life, because performance eventually breaks down. When it happens, people are going to be shocked. People who believed them are going to feel foolish. Family members who funded them are going to be horrified. And the saboteur themselves is going to experience something they've never felt before. Real accountability, real consequences, real public humiliation for private schemes they thought would stay hidden forever. But here's what's going to hit different. It's not just that they lied. It's the specific nature of the lies. They claimed spiritual transformation while secretly scheming. They talked about healing while actively harming. They preached about forgiveness while plotting revenge. They performed enlightenment while practicing deception. The hypocrisy is going to be staggering, and that's what's going to make people angry, because people can sometimes forgive being lied to, but being lied to by someone who positioned themselves as spiritually superior, by someone who acted like they were on a higher path, by someone who made others feel less evolved for not being as healed as them. That's a betrayal that cuts deeper. That's the kind of deception that makes people feel violated on a soul level. You remember how they talked, don't you? How they'd casually drop spiritual concepts into conversation, how they'd reference their practices and their journey and their connection to the divine, how they made it seem like they'd transcended the petty concerns that ordinary people deal with, how they positioned themselves as someone who'd moved beyond ego and drama, all while orchestrating the most ego-driven, drama-filled campaign of sabotage behind the scenes, all while paying lawyers to create obstacles, all while manipulating family members into funding attacks, all while lying to everyone about their true intentions. The contrast between what they preached and what they practiced is going to be grotesque when it's laid out in public view. The betrayal goes deeper than just feeling fooled. Think about all the people who second-guessed themselves because of the lies told about you, all the folks who questioned their own perception because you were painted as the problem, all the individuals who doubted their intuition because this person seemed so convincing. Some of them knew something was off. They felt it in their gut but couldn't articulate it. They had moments of doubt but pushed them aside because they wanted to believe the best in people. They saw inconsistencies but gave the benefit of the doubt. And now they're realizing their first instinct was right. That internal warning system that said something doesn't add up here was accurate all along. That realization changes people. It makes them trust themselves more. It makes them less likely to ignore red flags in the future. It makes them more discerning about who they support and why. And it makes them incredibly motivated to ensure they're on the right side this time, to make sure they're supporting truth instead of performance, to make sure they're investing in authenticity instead of facades. So they're going to show up for you in ways you never expected. People who barely knew you are going to become advocates. Family members who were neutral are going to become supporters. Individuals who funded the attacks are going to try to fund your success instead. Not because you asked them to, not because you manipulated them, but because they need to make it right in their own hearts. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in, so let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description, and this is where it gets interesting. Because you didn't just survive sabotage, you're about to benefit from the backlash. When people discover they've been lied to about someone, especially when that someone is clearly thriving despite the lies, they tend to overcorrect. They tend to support that person even more enthusiastically than they would have if they'd never been deceived in the first place. It's like a pendulum. It swung hard in one direction based on lies. Now it's going to swing equally hard in the other direction based on truth. And you're about to experience what that momentum feels like. Doors that were closed are going to fly open. Opportunities that were blocked are going to appear in multiples. Resources that were withheld are going to flood in. The professional world is going to respond too. Because this person didn't just lie to family and friends. They spread their narrative in professional circles. They told people in the industry that you were unreliable or difficult or problematic. They poisoned wells you didn't even know existed. They created a reputation for you based on fiction. Every person who heard those lies and made decisions based on them is going to reassess. Every opportunity you were passed over for is going to be reconsidered. Every door that closed based on misinformation is going to be examined with fresh eyes. And some of those people are going to feel terrible. They're going to realize they judged you unfairly. They're going to recognize they made professional decisions based on slander. They're going to want to make amends. And in the professional world, amends look like opportunities, introductions, contracts, platforms, access. You're going to get emails from people you've never met, apologizing for believing rumors. You're going to receive invitations to spaces you were previously excluded from. You're going to be offered chances to prove yourself in arenas where you were written off before you even got started. The professional redemption is going to be as public as the private betrayal was secret, and the person who created this mess is going to have to watch it all unfold. They're going to see their lies backfire in real time. They're going to witness the exact opposite outcome of what they intended. They're going to realize that every seed they planted to destroy you actually grew into something that elevated you instead. Think about the psychology of that. Imagine putting all that energy into stopping someone, all that time, all that effort, all that manipulation, all those late-night conversations strategizing about how to keep someone down, and then watching every single thing you did accomplish the opposite, watching your target not just survive, but thrive, not just recover, but transform, not just continue, but accelerate. That's not just defeat. That's being forced to watch your own failure on repeat. That's having to see evidence every single day that you were wrong, that your assessment was incorrect, that your strategy was flawed, that your understanding was broken, that your whole approach was backwards, and they can't even blame you for it, because you didn't retaliate, you didn't engage in their games, you didn't stoop to their level, you just kept healing, kept growing, kept preparing, kept moving forward. You let the universe handle the justice while you handled the work, and now the results speak for themselves. The news about you isn't just going to hit them like garbage, it's going to haunt them, because it's not one piece of news, it's going to be a steady stream, your name mentioned in spaces they wanted to access, your work featured on platforms they tried to reach, your voice amplified by people they tried to impress. Every notification is going to be a reminder of their failure. They're going to see you interviewed about your journey. They're going to watch you share your story of overcoming obstacles without ever naming them specifically. They're going to witness you inspiring others who faced similar sabotage, and they're going to know that every person you help, every life you touch, every transformation you facilitate is a direct result of what you learned while surviving what they did to you. Your healing is going to help heal others. Your breakthrough is going to create breakthroughs for people you've never met. Your story is going to give permission to individuals who thought they were alone in their struggle, and the person who tried to silence that story is going to have to live with knowing they almost prevented all of that impact from happening. But they didn't prevent it. They delayed it, maybe, made it harder, certainly, but prevented, never, because what's meant for you is going to find you. What you're called to do is going to get done. Who you're meant to become is inevitable. The only question was whether you'd let their interference stop you or refine you. You chose refinement. You chose to let the pressure create diamonds instead of dust. You chose to let the resistance build strength instead of resentment. You chose to let the obstacles become stepping stones instead of stumbling blocks. And that choice is why you're about to win in ways they can't even comprehend. Because they're still playing checkers, and you've moved to chess. They're still fighting yesterday's battles, and you've already won tomorrow's war. They're still trying to damage your reputation while you're building a legacy. They're still concerned with how they look while you're focused on who you're becoming. The levels are different, the frequencies are different, the games are different, And they're going to realize too late that they never had a chance of stopping you because they were never even in the same arena. They thought they were competitors. They were just background noise. They thought they were obstacles. They were just training equipment. They thought they were your enemy. They were just your confirmation that you were on the right path. Because easy paths don't lead to extraordinary destinations. Comfortable journeys don't create legendary stories. Simple challenges don't produce unstoppable warriors. You needed the resistance to become who you're meant to be, and they provided it, unwittingly, unwillingly, but effectively. The family members who funded this nightmare are going to have to face what they participated in. They're going to have to admit they funded an assault on an innocent person. They're going to have to acknowledge they were so easily manipulated that they never even questioned the story. They're going to have to look at themselves in the mirror and reconcile their self-image as good people with the reality of what they enabled. Some of them are going to try to make it right. They're going to reach out to you, apologize, offer to help in whatever way they can. They're going to want to undo the damage, even though it can't be undone. And you're going to have to decide how you handle that, whether you accept their apologies, whether you let them make amends, whether you give them access to the new life you're building. Others are going to double down. They're going to insist they were still right to be cautious. They're going to find new reasons to justify their actions. They're going to rewrite their own involvement to make themselves look less culpable. You're going to see who has real character and who just has good PR. You're going to learn who's capable of admitting when they're wrong and who will lie to themselves to protect their ego. You're going to see two paths in front of you, two completely different timelines, two versions of your future, and you can only walk one. On one path there's safety, familiarity, the people you know, the life you've built, even if it's smaller than what you're capable of. There are people on this path who love you, who want what's best for you, who aren't trying to sabotage you, but they also can't go where you're about to go, not because they're bad people, because they're not built for that altitude. This path isn't wrong, it's just different. It's the life where you stay in your current circle or your current level, where things are comfortable, predictable, where you're celebrated but within limits, where success is possible but greatness isn't. On the other path, there's expansion, unknown territory, new people who operate at frequencies you've only imagined, opportunities that terrify you as much as they excite you, a version of yourself you've only seen in dreams, the life where you become everything you were meant to be. This is the path to recognition, to impact, to building something that outlives you, but it comes with a cost, and that cost is leaving behind the version of your life that feels safe. And here's the hardest part. There are people you love on the first path, people who've been there for you, people who supported you when you had nothing, and choosing the second path means leaving them behind, not because you don't love them, but because they can't come with you. They're not meant to. Their journey is different from yours. You're going to have to choose between the person who wants to come with you but will hold you back, and the future that requires you to let go of your past, between the relationship that feels safe and the opportunity that feels destined, between comfort and calling. This choice is going to hurt. It's going to feel like you're abandoning people. It's going to feel selfish. It's going to feel like you're choosing fame over family or success over relationships. And there are going to be people who make you feel guilty about it. But choosing yourself isn't selfish. Choosing your destiny isn't abandonment. Choosing to become who you were meant to be isn't betrayal, it's obedience. Obedience to something bigger than you, to a calling that existed before you did, to a purpose that will impact people you haven't even met yet. And when you make that choice, when you step through that door, understand something. This isn't going to be easy. This opportunity is going to change your life, but it requires real work. The kind of grueling preparation that separates people who dream from people who achieve. Your schedule is going to transform completely. The comfortable balance you had is going to disappear. The free time is going to vanish. You're going to have to practice, prepare, show up even when you're exhausted. The opportunity opens the door, but your discipline keeps it open. You see the finished product when you look at successful people. You see the performances, the accolades, the lifestyle, the recognition. What you don't see is the hours of practice, the repeated failures, the nights where they wanted to quit, the sacrifices they made that nobody knows about. This is where most people quit. They thought the hard part was getting the opportunity. They didn't realize that capitalizing on it requires a level of commitment most people aren't willing to give. But you're different. You've already proven that. You've already done hard things. You've already rebuilt yourself from nothing. By the time all of this is happening, by the time people are scrambling to manage the fallout and control the narrative and salvage what's left of their reputations, you're going to be in a completely different space mentally and physically. You're going to be working with people who never doubted you, building something with people who saw your value from the beginning, creating an environment where your truth was never questioned. The person with power who recognized your golden frequency, they're going to introduce you to their network, and that network is going to be filled with people who operate at a level where this kind of petty sabotage doesn't even compute. People who are so focused on building and creating and impacting that they don't have time for drama. People who vet thoroughly before they engage, so if you're in the room they already know you're legitimate. You're going to have conversations that expand your mind, collaborations that stretch your capacity, opportunities that require you to grow into a bigger version of yourself just to meet the moment. And in the middle of all that expansion, someone's going to mention the news about what happened, about the exposure, about the lies being revealed, about the person who tried to sabotage you facing consequences, and you're going to feel something you didn't expect. Not satisfaction, not vindication, something more like distance, like that whole situation happened to a different version of you in a different lifetime. Because the you that got attacked and manipulated and sabotaged doesn't exist anymore. That version of you has been transformed through the fire. You've become someone else entirely, someone they can't touch, someone they can't hurt, someone they can't even reach. You're going to be in rooms you used to only dream about, working with people you admired from a distance, creating things that impact lives on scales you couldn't have imagined, using your voice to move people, sharing your story to heal others, walking the same path you walked, and it's going to feel natural, like you finally found the place you were always meant to occupy. All those years of feeling like you didn't fit anywhere make sense now. You weren't supposed to fit in those small spaces. You were supposed to create new ones, build new tables, establish new standards. Your healing journey becomes a roadmap. Your breakthrough becomes proof. Your story becomes permission for others to pursue their own transformation without apology. The resources come. The inheritance that was withheld gets released. The opportunities that were blocked start flowing, not because you fought for them, because the universe is restoring what was stolen, because justice always comes even when it doesn't look like you expected. By the time the person who worked against you is dealing with their consequences, you're so far into your new life that their downfall barely registers. You might hear about it, might see it, but it doesn't give you the satisfaction you thought it would, because you realize your success was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right, about fulfilling a purpose that existed before they ever tried to interfere. You look back and see how everything had to happen exactly this way. The betrayals positioned you, the attacks prepared you, the obstacles refined you, the lies about you created the contrast that made the truth about you shine brighter. Every single thing that was meant to destroy you actually built you into someone indestructible, and you use it all. You use your story to help others. You use your platform to amplify silenced voices. You use your resources to create opportunities for people who remind you of who you used to be. You use your power to dismantle the same systems that tried to keep you powerless. You're not just breaking generational curses for yourself. You're breaking them for everyone who comes after you. You're not just healing your own wounds. You're healing the wounds of everyone who shares your story. You're not just winning your own battles. You're winning battles for people who don't even know they're fighting yet. Your destiny doesn't require anyone's permission. Your purpose doesn't need anyone's approval. Your calling doesn't wait for anyone's blessing. You were chosen before you were born. You were assigned before you took your first breath. You were destined for this before anyone had an opinion about whether you deserved it. And what's for you will always find you, no matter how many detours, no matter how many battles, no matter how many times you have to rise after being knocked down. The news about you is going to hit them like a bag of garbage. The lies they told are going to be exposed. The mask they wore is going to slip, and everyone is going to know. But by then you'll be so far into your new life, so deep into your purpose, so committed to your mission, that their downfall barely registers as a footnote in your story. Your story was always about you, about your transformation, about your ascension, about your purpose, about the lives you're going to touch, and the systems you're going to change, and the legacy you're going to leave. They were just the resistance that made you stronger, the opposition that made you sharper, the darkness that made your light more necessary. And now that light is about to shine so bright that everyone's going to see it, everyone's going to feel it, everyone's going to know that something special is happening, that someone extraordinary is rising, that a chosen one is finally stepping into their power. That chosen one is you. And what's about to happen is going to be extraordinary.